to the Point of Impact podcast with Rick McDaniel. Thanks for joining us today. Get ready to be inspired and motivated to live a high-impact life. Now, here's Rick.
Welcome to the Point of Impact podcast. I'm Rick McDaniel. It's great to have you joining with us again today. Today, we're going to finish up this series of episodes that we've been doing on champions, winners in the game of life, gold medal living, call it what you will. The whole idea being, what can we learn from a few months ago when the Olympics took place? What does it take to win in life? What would it look like for you to get a gold medal in what matters to you in the event, the focus, the area of your life that you want to win in most? And we're going to finish up today with this classic, which is winners never quit. Winners never quit. No one's ever won who quit. We all know that. So before we get into that, and we got a lot to cover today, so I just want to say that my new book, Greater, Daily Inspiration to Increase Your Faith, which is a book that has 100 devotions or readings or meditations, extremely inspirational if you want to live a greater life. If that's something that you would be interested in and be excited about, and I don't know why anyone would not, but if you are, this is the book for you. I mean, this is just 3 minutes each day to just read, and every day you'll become more hopeful and optimistic. Your faith is going to increase. You're going to begin to give yourself permission to believe for greater, to believe you're meant for greater things, and believe that God's preparing you for a greater future, that God really wants to develop your capacity for greater responsibility, greater influence, greater impact. I mean, a greater life is waiting for you, man. It's going to be good. It is now available for pre-order. If you go on Amazon, you can pre-order the book. It comes out November the 18th, so it'll be out in exactly 1 month from today. So go pre-order it. And great price point, $14.99. I mean, man, that is not a lot of money for inspiration every day for 100 days. So really excited about this book. And by the way, still probably could take a few more people if you're interested in being on the launch team, where you get a digital copy and you get to read some of it and see what it's all about, and then be able to help us out with a review and all that sort of stuff. Just you can go to rickmcdaniel.com and fill in the contact form, say Greater Book Launch Team, or you can email Terry, Terri, at rickmcdaniel.com, Terry at rickmcdaniel.com with 2 R's, and just say, hey, Terry, I'd like to be on the launch team, so send you a link to sign up for it. So we want to do that. That's great as well. Or if you say, no, I'll just pre-order the book, Rick, and can't wait to read it. It's going to be really, really, really inspirational. All right, let's jump in today because we've got a lot to cover on this whole idea of winners never quit, right? I mean, there's no Olympic champion that quit. That's how we know they were a champion, because they did not quit. God wants you to finish. He started something great in your life. It's a great scripture verse in the Bible, in the book of James, chapter 1 and verse 5. It says, he has begun a good work in you and he will complete it until the day of Jesus' return. He's got a work he's doing in your life, and he's going to keep working on you. And it's good work, and he wants you to be a winner in life, be a champion in this game of life. And the only way that you can stop that from happening is by quitting. That is the guarantee. He'll complete what he's begun, whatever your present circumstances may be. And maybe you're really at that quitting point, and this is such a providential message for you to hear, to listen to this episode today, because you're right there. You're like, was I really born for a purpose? Yes, you were born for a purpose. Yes, you were. And you can't quit now, because you're going to complete it. You have to be able to stay in there, and that's challenging. You got to keep pressing forward. Keep your eyes on the prize. That's what the Apostle Paul said in Philippians 3. I keep my eyes on the prize. That's what I'm after. I'm moving forward. I'm not going to give in and to quit. So how about we just start with this? What causes us to want to quit? What is it? And I think a good place to start would be the culture that we live in. I would call it an overload culture. I'm not the only one who call it that, by the way. We live in an overload culture. And what I mean by that is it's almost overwhelming, the pace of the following things, okay? First of all, the pace of change. The pace of change is just stunning, just absolutely stunning, the way things are changing. I don't know if you happened to see last week when Elon Musk was debuting his robo-taxi and also debuted the Optimus robots and like showed this video, of like robots like getting the groceries out of your car and like cleaning up the dishes and, all this stuff, doing lawn work. I mean, it's just, wow. Some of you may be old enough to remember a cartoon that used to be on TV called The Jetsons a long time ago. And in that cartoon, they had them kind of just like, flying around in their little vehicles instead of driving. And, they had a robot, just all this stuff that it's just stuff that, you just, you would have laughed when you saw it because you just thought, what a crazy, and here we are now. The kind of changes that are taking place, that the day's going to come when cars will drive themselves. There are several companies right now that are working on various types of helicopter transport that, forget all this traffic. We're going to get above it all and zip around. And of course there's, helicopters for the wealthy. There are helicopters, but this would be the sort of thing that you could just take, like you would take a taxi or an Uber or something like that. And that's just, one thing. I mean, we could talk about so many things in which change is just so insane. The amount of change and just, just everything that's happened with the whole remote movement since the pandemic. We could talk about things having to do with morality and sexuality. I mean, it's just everywhere you turn, it's change. All right. Then you have overload in terms of activities. There's never been so many choices for activities ever. I mean, there's just so many things to do now that, you just think about it used to be three networks, 3 television stations, and now there's, multiple streaming services with all types of stuff. There is all this stuff in gaming, all these options, and there's just so much you can do in terms of sports and recreation, just everywhere you turn. If you have children, the level of activity is just unreal compared to, say, what it was even when you were a kid. There's also the overload of choice. Just, go out and buy something, maybe a larger item, and just look at how many different wash machines or dryers or refrigerators are there? It's just like, holy smokes, there's so many different choices, so many different options. And now, like in cars, you've got regular gas cars, hybrid gas and electric cars. Within all of those, all kinds of different choices. I mean, it's just, it's overwhelming. And then finally, information. You talk about an overload culture, information overload. It's just coming at you everywhere. That little phone that's sitting on your desk right now, or is in your pocket, or maybe in your hand, you're listening to this, or you've got it propped up somewhere or in some kind of holder. That thing is just constantly feeding you an enormous amount of information, and it is incredible, and it can be overwhelming. So what happens is this really leads to fatigue. And Coach used to say, fatigue makes cowards of us all. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. I believe that with all my heart. So the more fatigued you are, the less courageous you are, and the more likely you are then to quit because of fatigue. Fatigue comes from inadequate rest, from stress, from wrong priorities, from a lack of connection with God, prayer, Bible reading, church fellowship. It comes from unresolved conflict, unresolved bitterness. It comes from role overload, just, in terms of what you've got to do. So there's so many, poor nutrition. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Now, just want to give you this little quiz today, and you can't, pass or fail this thing. There's no A or B. It's just, yes or no. You're like, yes or no. Yes or no. Do you tire more easily, feeling wiped out by the time it's bedtime, time to go to bed? Are you becoming more cynical and disenchanted? Has your interest in life, your sex drive, your sense of humor decreased? Does it seem like you're working harder but accomplishing less? Do routine chores seem exhausting and frustrating? Are you becoming more preoccupied with minor details and finding it difficult to concentrate? Do you have lingering physical issues like constipation, diarrhea, heartburn, or aching, roving sort of aches and pains? And by the way, the experts would say if you have 2 or more of these, you're suffering from fatigue. Just 2 of the, how many did I just see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Of the 7, if you just had 2 or more, you're suffering from fatigue. And that's just where we're at right now. So fatigue is real. It's real. And this kind of challenge is so difficult. And so really what we're talking about in this whole concept of fatigue and overload is maybe the larger sense of adversity, facing adversities. I read one study that said that we average in a day 25 adversities. In a day, 25 different things that in some way, there's traffic that's keeping you from where you want to get to, or somebody called you out of the blue and the phone call's taking longer than you planned, just things like that too. The person that was supposed to deliver this item didn't deliver it, or the person that was supposed to deliver on this project you're working on did not in fact do what they're supposed to do, and on it goes. And we all face them. Now, in that same article, they listed out, who's really at the top end of adversity, okay? Number 1 at the top, by the way, single parents. If you're a single parent, you are at the very top of adversities because you are really dealing with that role overload, because you've got your work that you have to do to provide for the family, and then you have your parenting role that you have to do, and you're doing that all simultaneously. It's not like you have your spouse to help you in doing that. Second is entrepreneurs, and I know a little bit about this, having started 7 different organizations from scratch. So I know, and I say a little, I know a ton, I know a lot about the adversities that you face in trying to get something off the ground and make it successful. So if you're in those groups, you're at the high end of adversity, but all of us face adversities, and this leads to fatigue because of the overload culture. And, you may be saying, well, Rick, you're doing a fantastic job today of painting the picture of everything that's wrong. Hope you have some answers here because, man, this is getting tough. Well, I don't ever come with just the problem. I come with the solution to the problem. So let's just go a little farther into this so that we can begin to reveal the answer. Really what we're talking about, and this guy named Dr. Richard Swenson wrote a book about this, is living without margin in your life. Living without margin. So you say, well, what is margin? Margin is the amount between what is needed and the leeway between ourselves and our limits. It's that amount beyond what is needed. So the leeway, the margin between who we are, what we can do, and what we are doing, and what our limits are, what we can do. That's a great, simple definition. You know, I'll say it another way. Margin is the amount beyond what is needed. Beyond what is needed. You know, so it's this, these are your limits, and this is where you are now. And the problem is, some of you may go, there is no difference there. I am at my limits. And I would say, if you're at your limit, then you are living with no margin. When you reach the limit of your resources or your abilities, you have no margin left. None. Zero. And that is not a place that you want to be, friend. And you might say, yeah, no kidding. Now you know why I want to quit and give up. Margin is room to breathe, freedom to think, permission to heal, time to listen and love. It's absolutely essential to winning in life. You can't win if you have no margin. And in fact, you'll end up quitting, which causes you to lose. Margin exists for relationship, our relationship with God and our relationship with other people. Well, just watch how this works, because it's really powerful. You know, I mean, man, this may be new to you, maybe not. I've written about this in one of my books, particularly just this concept in terms of margin as it relates to having a comeback and turn your setbacks into comebacks. Fatigue affects our emotions, okay? So here's lack of margin. We're fatigued. We're overloaded. You see how these things go together? The overload culture creates a lack of margin, which leads to fatigue. And so here's what happens. We become self-protective. You say, well, what's wrong with self-care? Well, you know, that's like a whole nother subject in terms of, there's nothing wrong with that in its most sort of basic sense of what it means. But when you become self-protective, you're just not open. You're just not open to new experiences, new relationships, new ideas. And that is not a healthy place to be. The whole purpose of self-care would be to get you to a place where you are open. Fatigue attacks our bodies, right? Leaving us weak. So fatigue attacks our emotions. We end up being self-protective. Attacks our bodies. We end up being weak. It attacks our relationships, and that leaves us isolated. You see how bad all these things are. Whereas margin gives us what we need. I used the courage makes cowards of us all. Here's another coaching phrase of football, but it applies to a lot of sports. But football is the greatest sport, and we're in football season, so why not use it? All right? Your greatest ability is your availability. We all know these players, they're awesome when they're on the field, but they can't seem to stay on the field. Your greatest ability is your availability. And margin is what availability is all about. See, if you're completely up to your limits, then you have no availability. And so you miss out. You that's how you win, because you have availability. Lack of margin causes us to go into survival mode. We're just wanting to survive. We're not thriving, we're just surviving. And man, there is a massive, and I mean a massive difference between thriving and surviving. And the problem with surviving is you get to a point where, you know, that it's just surviving. Okay, that's it. That's all you're really hoping for. And, that just leads to quitting, because that's not motivational. That doesn't get you up in the morning and keep you going towards your goals and your dreams, just surviving. So you have to be able to say, okay, what can I do? What can I do to keep this from happening? Because really, it's this ability to have margin in your life, to not get fatigued, to not get overwhelmed. And it's exactly this kind of level of resilience amidst adversity. That is the difference between who succeeds and who fails, who wins and who loses. And that's true in the Olympics, and it's true in business, and it's true in your life. That's just an absolute fact. You can take it to the bank. It's true. And just so you're clear about this margin, I'm talking about like margin in all aspects of your life. In other words, there's margin in, you say, emotional energy and physical energy and time and finances. It's not just this one thing called margin that is all your life. It's all these subsets of your life that you need to be able to have margin. And you may have margin in one of them, but you don't have margin in the one that you need to see victory, to win in your life, or win in a particular area or part of your life. So you have to understand this just from the start, the overload culture. Now you say, well, what am I going to do about this? Knowing's half the battle. Just being aware that just because we live in this culture with all these changes and all these choices and all these activities and all this information does not require us to buy into all of it. We can sit it out. My youngest son is like off of all social media. And I just was with him at a football game just last week, and he's like, I'm this close, Dad, with his fingers, index finger and thumb, to just getting rid of the iPhone and going back to the flip phone. I mean, you don't have to buy into this stuff. You don't have to let your life be. He doesn't even own a TV. I mean, you can choose these ways if you want to. Now, again, emotional energy, physical energy, time, and finances. These are like your four major areas of margin. And so you say, well, how do I know? What would be a test? Well, here's a good test. Increase by 10 to as much as 20% your demands in any one of those areas of your life, and see what happens. If you thrive, you have margin. If you don't, if it's bad, if you struggle, then you don't have any margin. You went over. It's pretty simple little exercise. Now, you may say, hey, I don't even need to do that. I can tell you right now, just listen to you, Rick. I know right where I'm at. And that may be true. So after you do that, what might you do? Well, you might do things like this. Limit your long-term commitments. Just learn to say no. I did a whole episode on no, by the way. You can go back and listen to it. Whole episode on saying no. Limit your long-term commitments. Take more breaks. Maybe you look at it, you're just not taking enough breaks. Again, I've done an episode on why I think travel is so important and rejuvenating and good for you in so many different ways in your creativity. Maintain balance, make balance one of your key values, one of my key values. So you want to live in balance in your life. Never get too far to the extremes. Monitor your technology. Yeah, I guess every week the iPhone at least gives you, the report. This is how many hours a day you've been spending on this thing. What's that say? What does that say? Is the numbers stunning? Is it 4, 6 hours? 8. I've never had those numbers, but maybe you have. And what is that telling you? Are you getting enough sleep? And if not, get better sleep. Go to bed earlier. I know it makes you like seem old, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to bed so early, but sleep is so vitally important. I mean, that's where everything gets restored. So it's just so important. I would say guard your dinner hour. Like, listen, just really be careful. When I had children and I was working, again, entrepreneurial, starting things, working 15-hour days, 16-hour days sometimes, was at least I'd come home. Maybe that's the only time I would be home, but I'd be home for dinner, connecting with the kids. And those were seasons, by the way. They didn't go on forever. Eat right, lose weight, exercise. You say, I don't have time for that. If you don't have time to it, then you don't have margin. You can't exercise this. This is your only body you'll ever have. It's built to be exercised. And you're not doing that. My famous line I've used so many times and so many have copied: schedule your priorities. Don't prioritize your schedule. In other words, do not look at your schedule and go, oh, how can I move things around and prioritize? No. Schedule in your priorities. Put your priorities in, like exercise, like dinner time with my family. Just schedule in. I can't be at that meeting because I'm having dinner with my family. I can't go to that. For my entire basic adult career, I've never had breakfast meetings because I work out in the morning and I have my time with God of prayer and the Bible and devotions. And so I don't miss that. I won't miss it. So you can't have a breakfast meeting with me. You can have a lunch meeting all day long. And I've had lunch meetings my entire life, like hardly ever eaten alone in my life at lunch. Laugh more. Pray more. Serve. Get involved in serving others. You say, I don't have time to serve. You don't have margin. God put you on this earth to not just for you, but for you to help others. What are you doing to help others? God gives you gifts. You have to use those gifts to serve and bless other people. You're blessed to be a blessing. You don't have time to serve, then things need to be rearranged. Things need to be redone. It's not working correctly. It's not working right. Manage your expectations. Man, that's one of those one finger at you and three back at me. Man, oh man, But you just say, listen, train yourself that there is adversity. So don't expect everything to be a win. Again, three hits out of every 10 and you're a great hitter in baseball. That means 7 times you didn't. You make half your shots in basketball, you're a great shooter. That means you miss half. So train yourself to be able to survive through adversity and end up thriving and not quitting. Improvise. Sometimes to survive and ultimately thrive, you've got to improvise. That's what the SEALs do. That's what UPS does. They all are like, okay, what are we going to do now? Work the problem. We got to figure this thing out. We're not giving up. We're not quitting. We're just saying we've got to figure out a way to get things done. When you spend time with God, refreshing yourself, practicing confession, receiving God's forgiveness, receiving his strength into your life, connecting with God through prayer and reading the Bible and reading devotions and getting that kind of inspiration and boost that you need to start your day. That's why David says, early in the morning, I rise up to greet you, Lord. Like, start my day with God before anything else. I get myself in the right mindset and I connect with God in the right way and I receive the energy and strength. I've had a good night's sleep and now I start my day like this and now I'm ready to go and take on the day. You don't have to quit. These will work. These principles will work. You put this stuff into practice in your life, it will bring you success. You will win. You will not quit. You will keep going until you reach your goal. Start putting this stuff into practice. Get margin in your life. Watch the fatigue go away and start moving in the direction of your goals and your dreams. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Point of Impact podcast with Rick McDaniel. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to you joining us for our next episode.